Welcome to the Intelligent Investing Podcast, where modern portfolio theory can suck it. A student of the School of Graham and Doddsville and a clergy member of the Church of Warren Buffett. Here's your host, Eric Schlein.
Hi, this is Eric Schlein. You're listening to the Intelligent Investing Podcast. Today we have a special Corner of Berkshire and Fairfax edition, which is a value investing message board that I'm a big fan of and has an amazing community. So shout out to all you amazing people who help make that community incredible. Today we have a member from that community. I do not know how to pronounce your username because every time you say it, I can't replicate it. So how do you say your username?
Spekulatius.
Exactly. That's why I can't pronounce it. So say it one more time.
Spekulatius.
Spekulatius.
Close enough.
That's okay. I'm gonna not even try again. I'll quit while I'm ahead. So, what does that mean exactly?
It's a wordplay, really. Spekulatius is close to speculation.
Okay.
So there's a money angle to it, and it's also a Christmas cookie that is pretty popular in Germany or in Holland, Dutch. Spekulus. If you ever want to go to Trader Joe's, you can find them there.
See, I should have had you on Christmas Eve, and then I could have had I'm having a Christmas cookie on Christmas Eve. It would have been very timely. So, late Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you.
And this is the first podcast we're doing after the Christmas Eve podcast, which I thank you for all your feedback on that one. Now, before we get started, can you just tell us a little bit about what you do? And I know you invest in a lot of very obscure kinds of stocks. Is that correct?
Yes, obscure stocks, but also just the regular stocks, large caps, and pretty much across the board. I do international stocks. My accent is from Germany, so I buy German stocks too, Japanese stocks, pretty much everything that is cheap.
Okay, interesting. And I also want to say that today is the first time we have, I can't even say this with a straight face, a live studio audience of one, where we have another member from the Corner of Berkshire and Fairfax. He's not going to say anything today. He's just going to be our live studio audience, and I'm sure he'll be cheering and applauding every time we just say something crazy. So welcome to the studio. I'm sure you can describe how incredible, immaculate it is, and how much work we put into it. And as you can see, our engineer and producer in the back waving to you, who's also me, by the way. But I wasn't supposed to say that. So anyway, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, we have discussed some really obscure companies, and the one I own, and full disclosure, I own, and that I think is a pretty interesting company to look at, is Queen City Investments.
So what do they do?
Well, it's sometimes hard to tell, but you have to look at it a little bit deeper. Okay. It's really a little mini conglomerate, I would say. It's a mixture of businesses. Conglomerate, yeah.
If there's something I don't understand, I'm just going to ask you what to say. So
yes,
cool.
And it's a trust business foremost, and it manages about, I think, 2.4 billion in assets. Then it's a bunch of land in Central California, about 25,000 acres, farmland, cattle ranches, and it's a bunch of cash too, and real estate holdings. And
how did you find this?
I found it when a couple years ago I won a scan on the for OTC stocks, and I looked at everything that was trading for more than $500 per share.
Okay.
And the idea was a simple one. There's so much kind of a dinky little companies there that are probably fraud, that I figured that, well, if it trades for more than $500 per share, it's probably not a fraud. So I was looking for expensive looking shares. And I found a couple of interesting ones. One of them was LA company that we talked about briefly before, and that some people are owning. And the other one was Queen City Investments. And there are a couple more.
Okay, and maybe some of the other ones we can do for future podcasts.
Sure.
If I don't scare you away from this one. So tell us a little bit about, when you looked at the company, what had you want to buy it? If you can maybe talk to us a little bit about the history of the business. Give us a little background.
Yes, the history is, as far as I know, is that it was basically spun off from a bank business from the Walker family, which is FMBL. That's a significantly sized business bank in Southern California. It's a very solid bank, and it's an interesting stock to look at just by itself. Trades at, I think, about $8,000 per share.
Okay.
And it was spun off, as far as I know, in the 70s. And it's been traded occasionally ever since.
Huh.
I don't know exactly what happened between 1970s and 2000s, but when I first looked at it, it pretty much looked the same way I describe it now. It's a cash box to some extent. The shares trade just lately at $1,170. It's a bid, I believe, and the ask is probably 10% higher.
Okay.
So they don't trade every week. Full disclosure, don't go out and buy them on a market bid. So I have broken down the valuation a bit. There are 47,800 shares out there. They don't buy back shares, so it's been steady ever since. For $1,170 per share, you get about $400 per share in cash and securities. The securities are muni bonds, I believe. You get about, I think, $70 million in properties, real estate properties in it, which I figured are worth probably about $500 per share. You get 25 acres or 0.52 acres in quite beautiful looking California land, Central California land, near coastal, which is worth, it's a little bit hard to tell. I would say it's probably worth between $12,000 and $15,000 per acre.
Does this land do anything, or is it just kind of sitting there?
Well, it's a cattle ranch.
It's the cattle, okay.
Yeah, so it's a cattle ranch. There are mineral rights that they own, because we know that I was able to pull up that they did some drilling at some point there, but it was abandoned.
Okay.
So I believe they have the mineral, and surely they have the water rights on it if somebody wants to play that angle. And it's probably just breaking even for them. I don't think it makes any money. They just.
So why do they continue that? What's their incentive to continue that business if it's not making any money?
I have no idea.
Huh.
I think what this in the end is, the only thing I can figure out, it's a wealth management thing for them. They just want to keep that for maybe future generations, and it probably should have never traded, and some shares leaked out. Somebody sold them to get liquidity, and now they're out there and they can't put them back in a box. Right. So I would think it's a little bit like a treasure chest. You find them, and there's more in it than you pay for, but you can't get the money out of it either, right? It's
right.
Now, the good news is the trust management business itself is generating the cash. It's about, I think they make about $50, and last year about $60 per share. About, I think, $1.4 million in income, or it was 1 year. It's more now. It has been growing slowly over time.
Okay.
So they pay a small dividend, $10 per share, and it hasn't changed forever either. So they just, basically what they do is they generate, slowly accumulate cash. The book value grows from retained earnings, and they recycle that into more real estate.
So they're buying more real estate. They're not
Yes, yeah. Over time, I've seen them buying real estate. They had some partnership that they bought out, and it happened. It was a Locust LLC. It was a limited partnership. Nobody knew what it was, but at the end it was dissolved, and it turned out to be real estate, and they bought it fully. So,
does the stock tend to react at all when they make an acquisition?
No, because I don't think that really. See, they only give an annual report to shareholders out, so you're not going to see any information online. And that annual report, it comes out typically in May. It's dated in May. It comes out in June, and shortly after received it, they have a shareholder meeting, typically on the 4th of July weekend, which I think makes sure that the attendance is as low as possible. But I think you could go there in Long Beach and ask a few questions. I would do it if I lived close by.
You think you could make the trip one year? Think you would do that?
I should have made it when I lived in California back then. It would have been shorter. Now it's
that could be a fun thing.
I hope that somebody else does it and reports to me. I know some shareholders in that I over time contacted, and I sent them the annual reports. And there are some people that know that there's something out there.
And how have you found these other shareholders of the company?
They're through online communities. Okay. And there's, the Oddball Stocks and OTC guys. So if you ever have a question about some of them, you should really contact these guys, and they know something.
Right. Huh.
They may not know everything, but often they know there's some shareholder out there that does this and this.
And what do you estimate they're growing their intrinsic value every year? I mean, is there a way to really figure that out? Yeah, I mean, if you say how much do you think they're worth, say today, the company, if you had
if you make a sum of the part analysis, and I did it and actually posted it online on. At that point, it was Silicon Investor. I came up with about $2,200 per share.
Okay.
So it's about 50%. And that was a couple of years ago, so I figured out it's probably worse than that. It's a little bit more than that right now. It's just to retained earnings.
And have you looked at, have they been successful in their capital allocation towards real estate acquisitions? Have they shown to be savvy investors in that space?
It's a little bit hard to tell. What I can tell is that over time, their rental income grows.
By what percent? They've been growing that, because that would be interesting to look.
Yeah, it went up from $2 million in 2013 to $2.5 million in 2017, according to my notes. These are just roundabout values. Trust fees went up from 7.8 million to 9.2 million. It's a slow grower.
Right.
It's not anything fantastic, but I think what they want to do is they want to have a store of value in this. They're not trying to optimize earnings. They have their trust management that pays the bills and creates the accounting profits, and the rest is probably just for tax reasons or whatever. They slowly accumulate real estate.
And is it a family that owns like the majority of the shares, or?
Yeah, it seems like most of those are still probably from the initial spin-off. There's a Walker family is in the shareholder base, and they are the same guys that run the FMBL, Farmers Bank of California. Yeah.
And are they paying themselves like egregious salaries and kind of using this as just a a way to steal from shareholders, or have you looked at that? That would be my first concern.
It's a valid question. I don't know if they're overpaying themselves. I know there is some related party transaction with FMBL where they share some branches, but that probably makes sense. They pay some rent to FMBL, but FMBL also rents some space from them. And whether that's fair or not, I don't. But I think they would just steal pocket and put it from one pocket to the other if they steal from it. So I don't think it makes too much sense for them to do that on that base. Whether they're overpaid or not, I can't tell. But I can say that the trust management looks reasonable. The numbers look reasonable.
And then you could say the real estate is probably growing a little bit in value every year as well.
Well, we know that the rental income grows, and
Right.
California real estate is not too bad. So it's in the LA area, somewhere there, Long
Okay.
Beach. That's where the address
And
is.
LA real estate's been growing at like, what, 6-7% a year for a little bit? Something like
That's possible. I wouldn't. You could probably
I know that market's
look from
been
the
hot.
revenues that they place on rent income and put a multiple on it. And that's kind of what I did in a roundabout way when I said there was about, let me look up my notes, what the real estate is worth. I had it at that point pegged at a $460 per share. It should be more than that. It was with $2.2 million rental income. I said it's probably 10x that income.
Okay.
That was my guesstimate. But yeah, you can put your own cap rates on it, and it's probably, in a roundabout way, I would say it's $500 per share.
Okay. And that's using what cap rate?
Well, it's 10 times the rental income,
Okay.
because I don't know what the expenses are.
Right. Do they break that out in their financial statements? Or
The disclosure is not the greatest.
is it all consolidated into like one?
It's consolidated. They have a somewhat of a breakdown, and I would be happy if I get contacted to send an annual
That would be a
report.
good question too for an annual meeting. Have them break things down a little bit more.
That would be.
What I would want to know is having them break down the numbers, in more depth of their different divisions, and then also see if they had some sort of grander vision or larger plan for their business too. That would be interesting to hear from the management.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a breakdown of where this real estate is located. I believe some people have went as far, and that was when Yahoo message boards were functional, and he pulled out tax records and pulled out what buildings they own, but the Yahoo message boards, they were basically changed. They are not usable really anymore. So I think that information may be lost. But I think somebody could put in work and find out where that real estate and which buildings they own and do this kind of stuff.
And if anyone has that information, feel free to send it along. That would be interesting to see.
Yeah,
What do you think that dividend is for? Is it just to
it's
pay
a
the
$10
family?
dividend, which has been the same.
Is that what they live off, you think?
Yeah, it's been the same
Probably think,
ever
right?
since. They don't really buy stock either, which I think would be probably the more.
Well, can they really with that kind of liquidity?
Well, that's the problem.
Right.
I think, but they might be able to do that when there's a seller there. You can't sell it really on the open market
Right.
either.
I mean, I've
Right,
seen
I mean-
companies like this where if there's a shareholder who wants to sell back to the company, they'll buy back stock from
Yes, yeah, that kind of stuff. Since they pretty much know each other too.
them.
I
What would be
guess.
interesting? I wonder if you call them up and see if they'd buy it from you at a premium. You never know.
Could
You don't
be.
plan to sell it for a while, though, right?
I kept it as such, and I mean, it hasn't really moved up as much as even the market in the time I held it, but it's not terrible either. I think it's one of those stocks that all of a sudden goes up probably by 50% in a month, and maybe even more. Who knows?
Right. Interesting.
But I think it's almost impossible to move money on this thing. I mean, that's kind of the attraction if you look at it. I mean, how hard is it to lose money on a ranch land, real estate, and all this one
I guess
shot?
your biggest risk is just dead money for 20 years or something like that.
That is correct.
Right?
I mean, that is the risk, but that's a slow risk that
It's
you can
not
take.
a bad risk to have, yeah.
Yeah.
It's better than buying Bitcoin and losing 95% of your money, right? Unless you bought Bitcoin at like 5 cents. And then you're still doing okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can regard these things as a backbone of a portfolio, so to speak, and maybe, in a way, these illiquid stocks sometimes, even when there's a really bad market rout, they actually often hold up better
Yeah.
than other stocks. You can actually use them occasionally I've used them as a source of liquidity. I mean,
If you can
it
sell
sounds you can't really go on the bid, but you can
Right.
put a bid out there, and it's probably not the best, but you
create a
could.
market.
If the market ever tanks 50%, I don't believe that this stock would go down to $500 per share. I don't think
and what's the trading at right now?
it's. I think it's 1170 bid and 1250. I mean, it's typically like a 10%, but there are. I mean, you've got to be patient with these things. Every once in a while, there are sellers out there, and they will hit your bid.
Yeah.
Or they will hit your ask. I mean, when there's buyers out there, it just doesn't happen very often. It's kind of almost like, well, it just really is. It's a private business, basically.
How many shareholders are there? Do you know? Probably under 100.
I would doubt it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there are, but I know 3.
Well, let's put it this way. I know another company, which I'm not going to say in the air, that has slightly over 100 shareholders, and 3 of them are in this room right now. So, just saying. Interesting. So, what price would it have to get to for you to consider to sell it?
I think it really depends on what the rest of the market is doing.
Oh,
I mean, I would even say, let's say, if you get a really route in the stock market and somebody hits my bid at 1170, and I see.
Do you have a sell order right now for 1170? Is that, or are you saying hypothetically?
Hypothetically,
Okay.
I would. I haven't sold any,
Yeah.
but I would consider then just saying, because I need
better
liquidity and I
opportunities,
really don't do margin, or in IIs I can't do margin anyways.
Right.
By the way, in Fidelity, you can't buy them. These companies, the dark companies, Fidelity doesn't allow you to buy them anymore.
Fidelity's a crock of shit, some of the stuff they've been doing in terms of not letting you buy certain companies.
I bought them in Fidelity, so you could,
And then you're
but
stuck
then
with it, right? So you can sell it, but you can't.
you can sell it,
back.
but you can't buy it
Yeah.
back. But most other brokers, like E-Trade, they will allow you to trade these still.
Fidelity, get your shit together. Seriously. Huh. Interactive brokers probably would let you buy that too.
Yes,
Yeah.
they do. Even interactive brokers doesn't let you buy anything. I mean, there are some stocks that you can't buy at interactive brokers. Because I tried to get shares of something, and they wouldn't. Somehow they don't show up in their system.
Yeah, that happens occasionally. So interesting. Any other things you want to say about the business? It's pretty simple.
I think it's a simple business. It's what I like about it is that all the parts of it probably over time get more valuable. Now, even if the discount doesn't close, if it ever closes, and it always trades for 50 cents on the dollar, the share value should increase by, I would say, single digits at least. And that's come hell and high water, really. And that's probably not a bad place to be. I'm pretty sure there are land buyers out there that if you put this piece of land, which is a really nice piece of land, out for sale, somebody would bid on it.
You know,
I mean, it's,
when these like families die or something, they pass it on to an heir, and the heir wants nothing to do with it. Sometimes you see corporate transactions happen like that. I could see it happening in that situation. Do you know how old the management is? Because that would actually be interesting.
yeah.
Right? If the guy's like running, it's like 90 years old.
No, I don't think the workers are. The bank is run from generation to generation,
Yeah.
so I think they might be able to renew themselves. But I don't recall.
Huh.
I think they're probably in their 50s, 60s.
Okay, interesting. Well, anyway, it was a pleasure having you on the show, and hope to have you back on for talking about some other obscure businesses.
Thank you.
Yeah, of
Thank
course. All right, have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the Intelligent Investing Podcast with Eric Schlein. If you'd like to connect with Eric for questions, comments, feedback, ideas, or to inquire about being on the show, please contact Eric at intelligentinvesting@gmail.com. So, in the words of Charlie Munger, I have nothing to add.